Hey, it's Jackie here, and I wanted to talk today about what's been going on with me and the health issues that I've been having to deal with over the last maybe 4.5 months. I know some people are aware of some of it, but not all of it. And the reason for this video is not for any kind of sympathy or any kind of woe is me type kind of attitude. I'm actually wanting to talk very openly about it because I don't think that enough people do. So this video is about women's health issues and, the things that can happen to us. And basically at any age, sometimes I think we think some of these things happen as we get older because we are conditioned to believe that when we get older, our bodies fail us. And, the more that we have that attitude and the more that we think that, then that's obviously what happens to our bodies. And, so the reason for this, and what I do want to say is that if you're not really interested in understanding about women's health, what goes on, kind of related to the root and the sacral chakra, the womb energy, what I'm sharing is open and honest. So some people might be like, oh my God, but I feel it's so important for us all to have an understanding of what happens with our bodies. And I've got to be honest, I had literally hardly any idea about the womb, about the pelvic area, because I'd never really had any reason, or so I thought, to look into it in any more kind of detail until all of this happened. And I'd also been having quite a lot of healing. And sorry, I've got a hair that's going right across here that's annoying me. I've been having quite a lot of healing prior to all of this happening. And now as a healer myself, I am very much aware that when we have healing, when we have Reiki or any kind of energetic form of healing, what that's doing is releasing and bringing up the things within our body that we as our own natural healers can then work with to heal. Not everybody does that. Not everybody takes the same attitude that I have done over the last few months to have a better sort of quality of life. And again, I just feel that this is key, because sometimes I think we get these things happening, these diagnoses, and we go into sort of self-destruct, because it doesn't just affect you physically, it affects you emotionally. And it's important that we acknowledge and understand what we're going through. And I suppose a lot of what I'm going through as well is possibly related to the menopause, but equally, it's not. A lot of what's going on for me is happening to younger women, and I just wasn't aware of these kind of things. So let's start at the beginning. So it was around about the middle of February, and I started noticing that I was getting, or that I had, really painful pain around the coccyx area. And it started getting worse and worse, and I was struggling to actually sit down, and then standing up made it worse. The pain was horrific. Okay, now I have fibromyalgia, so I've suffered with pain for quite a long time, but usually you kind of get used to having the pain, you live with the pain, it's quite manageable. But when it's in an area where it's affecting how you sit, it's affecting how you move, it's affecting how you lay, that has a huge impact, and it was affecting me emotionally as well as physically. Now, I assumed, because I'd had something very similar years ago, and it went, you know, it maybe lasted a week, 2 weeks, it went. So I just kept thinking, oh, this will go. In time, this will go. Then, a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks or so after that started, and this is now where we get into the kind of more detailed kind of bit. So as I said, if you're not interested in understanding about women's issues, women's problems, then I suggest you don't carry on watching this video, because I'm not really going to hold much back. So what I started noticing was that I was struggling to have a poo, basically. So I had one in the morning. Now I'd always been one of these where I'd have a coffee in the morning, and that made me regular. Now, when I'm talking about being regular, it probably wasn't the sort of poo that you want. You know, it was quite explosive, but that was just how it was. So I lived with that. But I started noticing, and at this point, I'd actually been following a heavy metal detox. I was doing a heavy metal detox smoother, and you had to put like 2 bananas in it. I don't know whether that kind of was the start of it, or whether that just brought it further along. I really don't know. And it was getting where I may have a poo, and then I still felt as if I needed one, and it was so uncomfortable. So it always felt like there was something there that needed to come out. So along with the coccyx pain, I then had this feeling of pressure, and that feeling of always needing to go to the toilet, and it wasn't nice, it wasn't pleasant, it was a horrible feeling. And it just so happened that at this time I had an appointment with a bladder nurse, because I'd been getting some stress incontinence where, you know, you jump up, or you cough, or you sneeze, or you do a certain move and a little bit of wee comes out. You know, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And so I went for the examination. Okay. Now, what she said to me was not what I was expecting her to say. She told me that my pelvic floor was quite weak, so when I was doing the contractions they were asking you to do, there wasn't a lot of strength there, which I was really surprised about, because I'd had an appointment earlier a few months ago with someone, and she said it was really strong. So something was not right. Then she said, you've got a prolapse, and it's a posterior prolapse. And I was like, oh, okay. Don't really know what that is. So we sat down. She said, that can affect you with your bowels. And I was like, oh, maybe, okay, this might be what's happening to me. And it was then a case of, do your Kegels 3 times a day. We'll speak in 3 months. That was it. So then I came home. So at first I was like, oh, okay, right, that's what it is. Just do the Kegels, it'll be okay. Came home, started Googling it, and realising that actually a posterior prolapse was what's called a rectocele. Then the kind of horror set in, because I started reading about what this is, what it can mean, how it can affect the quality of your life. And so basically, when someone has a prolapse, it's when organs can start to protrude into the vagina. So it could either be uterus, bladder, or rectum, which is what mine was. Okay. And I just spiraled. I was like, oh my God, this is horrendous. This is horrendous. Nobody wants this. And I then found a group on Facebook, which was good, but also not so good, because I think sometimes when you go into these groups, you find that I was wanting to find something that was going to help me, so to tell me good things. And obviously, when you start reading through some of the posts, it's going through all the horror stories, which is not really what I was wanting. So I went in there and basically said what had happened, and the advice was, go and pay for a private pelvic floor physiotherapist to get a proper assessment. But also prior to this, I'd left a message for the bladder nurse to say, I need to know more about this. You know, I don't know what the grade is, because I started reading about things that you can and can't do with a prolapse. Like, you can't do weight training, you can't do squats, you can't walk long distances. And I'm like, this is, you know, a lot of the things that I was wanting to do, including doing weight training and starting to walk. So at this point, it was huge, you know. So then I booked to see a pelvic floor therapist, physiotherapist. Then the following week, the bladder nurse rang me and said, oh, it's mild to moderate. And I'm like, right, okay. So what happens now? So she started telling me the things that I shouldn't do. Don't walk for long distances. No running. No weightlifting. No lifting. Anything heavy. You know, prior to that, a week before, I'd been moving wardrobes in the house, which was pretty heavy. So my mind was like, oh my God, is that what caused it? You just, none of us, I think, quite understand what can cause it. But a lot of it can be through constipation and a lot of straining and pushing, which, because I'd suffered with IBS throughout most of my life, I had obviously done quite a lot of that as well. So maybe it's something that built up over years. I don't know. Anyway, I went to see the private physical therapist, and she said it is a very mild grade 1. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. She also said, you can do whatever you want to do, as long as you're mindful about what you're doing. And, you know, engaging your pelvic floor if you're lifting, you know, anything related to sex is fine. It can't do any damage. In fact, it's good for it because it's good for the vaginal health. So she put my mind at rest with a lot of it. And I said, well, how come the bladder nurse said it was moderate? And again, it depends on whether you've opened your bowels when you've been to see her or not. So if you've not opened your bowels, obviously it could be protruding quite a lot. But then when you've opened your bowels, it obviously goes back up. What I also found was that there are women in the 20s, 30s, 40s that have a prolapse. Okay, so it's not an old woman thing, but that's how it made me feel initially. I felt like I'd been given a diagnosis of somebody being old. You know, I'm 54. This is what happens. You know, our bodies drop and everything just gives up. And that is the worst kind of attitude that you can have. But in the moment, that's just sometimes how it feels. So we're now talking probably end of March, beginning of April. The pain in the coccyx was still there. The physiotherapist has said to me that my glutes were really, really tight, and that could be contributing to the coccyx pain. Now, I'd been to a pelvic floor class for 6 weeks, and what I'd been doing in that class was squeezing my glutes just about nearly the whole time. So I was making them active the whole time. That can contribute to lots of various different things, and I'll come on to that in a bit. And so there was so much going off, and so much going off emotionally. I then decided the end of March to close one of my businesses. So I had Raise Your Vibe and Thrive Members Society. So I was helping spiritual women with their businesses. And I realised that actually I didn't want to do that anymore. there was some imposter syndrome going on with that. And I thought, you know what, there are women out there who probably can give them better information than me, but it just didn't align with who I was anymore. And I realised that I got different things that I wanted to teach, and I wanted to focus more on spiritual things. So I closed the business. Now, obviously, along with that came money issues as well, because you're closing your business, so you're closing a revenue stream that's coming in. And again, when I was right at the beginning, I said to you that a lot of this is based around the root and the sacral chakra. And, you know, the root is about security, your kind of tribe, your foundations. And the sacral chakra is sex, is money, is power. So a lot of this was being churned up, but I didn't necessarily know this at the time. So I closed that mid-April. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and the pain within the coccyx was getting worse, and it was making my whole buttocks numb. And then I had numbness and pins and needles going all the way down the legs. When I was taking Star, the dog, for a walk, I used to feel that I felt weak. My legs felt weak. It felt like that they would just kind of collapse. That brought up anxiety and some panic with that as well. And then I think it was 27th of April, I had an episode one night where the pain was really bad. My whole left leg just went numb. And then I just started shivering from head to foot. The anxiety was coming. I felt sick. I was nauseous. And I didn't know what was happening. Then the following morning, so that was the Wednesday night. Thursday morning, I was okay, but I knew I needed somebody to help me with this because it didn't feel right. So I managed to get an appointment with who I thought was a GP. It actually turned out to be a nurse. Straight away, she said, because I'd had some diarrhea that night as well, she was like, you need to go straight to A&E. So I sat for 4 hours in A&E, only to be told this is not an A&E issue. You need to go home. So I went home. The following morning, I woke up with the most horrendous pelvic pain. It was really bad pelvic pain. And it was that severe that I passed out. And then the pain started being there kind of the whole time. I ended up back in A&E again. They did some tests, and they said it's nothing that we think that we can help you with. However, we do think that you need to get an ultrasound of your pelvic area. So I came home again, and it got to the point where I couldn't even stand without feeling nauseous. So I was nauseous, I felt sick, I was weak, I got pelvic pain, coccyx pain. It was horrible. And quite hard to describe unless you're in the situation. So it was having a huge impact on me in terms of my emotional kind of well-being. It was making me very anxious, as I said, the panic feelings, and sex was out of the question because everything was just too painful. I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. Took the dog for a walk, got on the field, and then started feeling nauseous and had to come back home. So the dog didn't get walked for a week because I couldn't stand. I ended up back at the doctor's, who gave me medications and things to help with the nausea. But in all honesty, I didn't really want to be pumped up full of medication. And then I thought, okay, I need to do something about this. And the coccyx pain, I was thinking, is it bursitis? What is it? What's going on with all of this? I was still having the poo issues. feeling full, feeling bloated. I had like indigestion, and it wasn't pleasant. And then, so that was sort of end of Aprilish time. Then I turned the TV on and Loose Women came on. And I would have normally I would have just switched it over to put something else on, but I heard Frankie talking about endometriosis, and I suddenly thought, oh, I wonder whether that's what I've got. And then my sister texted me, whether it was the same day or day after, I'm not sure, and she just said she wondered whether it was endometriosis that I'd got. So I started looking into that, seeing all the symptoms, which fitted a lot with what I was going through and had been through throughout my life. Found a group on Facebook, and the woman there said the best thing that you can do is, because the NHS scans don't really find endometriosis, they would probably have to go in with a laparoscopy to find it. So I would suggest that you go down to London and pay for a private scan, and then you'll know one way or the other whether you've got it or whether you haven't got it. So went down to London, had the scan, and he said I had fairly moderate adenomyosis, which I didn't really know much about, which is basically it's the sister to endometriosis. So endometriosis grows outside of the uterus. Adenomyosis grows inside the uterus, so it makes it enlarged. And I also had a fibroid and some endometriosis on my left ovaries. The radiologist, the guy that I saw, said the only way to get rid of adenomyosis is a hysterectomy. But he was like, I wouldn't really advise that because A, you're in menopause, B, we don't know 100% whether that's what's causing the pain. Because when he was doing the internal examination, he tried to replicate the pain that I was getting in the coccyx, and it didn't replicate. Although at that point, my stomach was still tender, really tender to touch. And I felt nauseous. So I was nauseous the whole time I was having the examination, the whole time I was in London. Anyway, so I came back, went into the Facebook group with the results, and it was like, oh, well, you should have a hysterectomy. Because adenomyosis is very high risk of endometrial cancer. Do you really want a diseased uterus? And if you're getting all this coccyx pain, etc., then that seems to be the best option. And the thought of having a hysterectomy was not something I really wanted to do, because it's a huge major operation. And there are, obviously that can come with complications, and then you've got the recovery time from it as well. But I'd kind of convinced myself that was the only thing I could have. So I paid. I'd also paid privately to see a hemorrhoid doctor because I got hemorrhoid, and so then I was convinced that that's what was causing the coccyx pain. He said it wasn't. That's not what was causing it. I paid privately to see an endometriosis specialist, and he said to me that they would not do a hysterectomy as the first form of the first form of trying to help be to, work through the symptoms. And at that moment in his surgery, I didn't know whether I wanted to cry or whether I wanted to punch him. Not because he told me I couldn't have, well, because he'd said that, because I'd convinced myself so much I was going to have a hysterectomy, to then be told, actually, no, you're not. I just sat there and thought, have I just got to put up with this pain for the rest of my life? But when I came away from it and on reflection, I realised that what he was saying was right. Because A, we don't know it's going to stop the pain. B, could make the prolapse worse. And C, it's a major operation. So we need to look at other ways of managing the pain before we go straight in with a hysterectomy. And he also did an internal examination and said that my bowels were really full, the upper bowel. We need to get that sorted first. So then I booked him for a colonic. So there are so many different things that I've tried. So I went for a colonic irrigation. Lots of things came out. Did nada for the coccyx pain. Still there. So we're now in May time. Possibly beginning of... So I had this coccyx pain since the beginning of February, middle of February. I then decided to go and see an osteopath because I knew that I couldn't just accept all of this. I had to do something for myself. And in between all of this, I had an MRI scan on my back sometime in beginning of February, and the results came through that I'd got wear and tear arthritis in my lumbar spine. So that could have been causing some of the pins and needles in the legs as well. That diagnosis didn't really help because I was like, oh God, something else to add to all of this. And then I also joined the gym because I thought I'm not just going to sit back and let this take over my life. And I started doing yoga twice a week. I then started noticing improvements. The first class I did triggered. In fact, the first class I did was the day that I ended up, or the day after that, I ended up in A&E because it triggered a lot of stuff. It triggered the pins and needles. I was getting it in my hands. It triggered it in my legs, everywhere. But equally, joining the gym was one of the best things that I did because the yoga twice a week started to help me to stretch and move and get the movement in my spine, the movement in the coccyx. And it really started to have an improvement and an impact. Then I went to see the osteopath. And she said that I had a posterior pelvic tilt. So basically, your spine is straight. So normally we'd have that lumbar curve. Mine was straight and the tailbone was going underneath. And this was probably what was causing all of the pain. And my piriformis muscles, which are the muscles in the glutes, was really, really tight amongst other areas within, so the psoas, the hips, so much tightness there. She said I'd actually got quite a lot of movement and mobility. In fact, probably too much movement and mobility. So my hips were wobbly. So she gave me exercises to do twice a day. And I have I went away last week, still did them religiously twice a day. I've been doing these exercises, going to the gym and doing the yoga. And I'm starting to see improvements. The coccyx pain is still there, but nowhere near as bad as it was. And the exercises, again, I say, help him. But what I did do was start to do my own research. So I realised that when I was doing the pelvic floor classes and I was squeezing my glutes all the time, was probably the catalyst of the coccyx pain. So I think basically my coccyx or around that area, the muscles are just like, I've had enough. So because I probably had this posterior tilt for many, many, many years, not helped by the arthritis. So I'd been walking wrong. Everything was wrong. I'd done my research and realised that I was walking with my pelvis tucked in, which was equally making me not walk on my feet correctly. Now, 5 years ago, I had an issue with my ankle. Nobody could fathom out what was wrong with it. Well, I've now realised it's all connected, because when I walk correctly, I'm walking on a different area of my foot. When I go and just test and walk how I used to walk. I'm walking inwards on my feet, which started to cause a flat foot, which is what's happened to the left foot. So it's all connected. Everything is connected. The pelvic pain, everything. There's a whole host of stuff going on emotionally that I need to work through as well. So things from my childhood, from my adult time, from sex, money, power. You know, I'm often quite in my dominant power masculine energy. And obviously the womb energy is the feminine energy. So there's always been a bit of a disconnection there. So it's reconnecting with a lot of that divine feminine and healing a lot of trauma that I've been affected with, but not just me, but ancestral and past life trauma. Because in past lives, I was abused, and that starts to play out within our own current life. And I believe that as we're moving more and more from 3D to 5D, some of you won't necessarily understand what I'm talking about there. I'm talking about energetic shifts, frequencies. All of this is coming up now in order for me to be able to heal it. I probably wasn't ready before. We always think we're not ready. But now is the time where I'm understanding massively that I really need to be looking at this. I'm working with this energy and understanding what's going on with me, and, you know, the root and the sacral chakra, because we need to get these healed first before we can start working more on the upper chakras. Or I've got a very open crown chakra to spirit. But without the roots and the foundations built within the lower chakras, there's going to be an imbalance. And I'm talking with you all about this because I think it's key that if you are going through any of these kind of issues, if you've got lower back pain, if you've got hip pain, knee pain, ankle pain, go and see somebody who's going to look at you as a whole. You know, I paid privately to go and see somebody about my ankle. And he only looked down. You know, all he did was look at my feet and my gait. They didn't look at my pelvis. They didn't look to see how my pelvis was aligned. Whether it was tilted, whether it was in the right way, did I have a flat back? And until we understand the mechanics of the body is linked to everything, which is a shame that, you know, I mean, modern medicine obviously has its place. Do not think for 1 minute I'm saying it doesn't. However, what we tend to find with the modern medicine is that it will fix the pain element with medication, operations, is not looking at the root cause. It's not looking at the root cause that's causing it, okay? Now, I'm not saying that I had a posterior pelvic tilt because of emotional stuff. Who knows? But I am a huge believer as a healer that our emotions are, and suppressed emotions do suppress into the body, into the physical body. And we need to energetically get them released, okay? So when I'm having my sessions with the osteopath, that's helping to release the energy. And, you know, we have to be our own advocate. We have to understand what's going on with us ourselves. And, you know, yes, I've been to see outside people to get help. I wouldn't know that I'd got this posterior pelvic tilt if it wasn't for the osteopath. However, we have to take control of our own bodies and our own minds and of our own destiny. And that's, you know, through diet, through physical activity, because one of the worst things that we can do when we're given things like arthritis diagnosis or we've got back pain or leg pain or hip pain, we become immobile. So we sit and lead a sedentary lifestyle, which then makes it even worse. It compounds the issue. So the more you get up and the more you move, the less pain you are going to be in. You know, now believe me, when I started doing these exercises twice a day, it's triggered so much pain everywhere else, because I'm trying to now get a curve in my spine that's not been there for years. So that's triggering pain everywhere, you know, my shoulders, my hips, my leg again, all sorts of other pain is coming up because my body's going like, whoa, we're trying to move in a way that we're not used to moving in. But it has to be done. And I don't necessarily agree with the no pain, no gain, because when we're thinking about things like this, we have to make sure that we're not forcing pain on us. However, in order to heal and change some of the ways that we move, we may get some aches and we may get some pains along with that. And, you know, by no means am I healed yet, but I will be. I guarantee that I will be. And I'm going to keep sharing that with you and keep sharing that message with you. And I've realised that a lot of what I'm here to do in this physical world at this moment in time is to share my healing journey. Because a lot of what I'm going through now is probably stuff that I've gone through that I've denied, suppressed, not looked at in detail. Money issues, power issues. And when I'm talking about power issues, I'm talking about control, always needing to be in control. Whether it's myself, whether it's other people. And that for me at the moment is being challenged. And that's a little bit uncomfortable. But it has to happen in order for me to be able to heal it and work through it. You know, sex. So the sex, I'm not talking about necessarily physical sex. I'm talking about how we feel within our own body. Whether we feel sexy, whether we feel attractive, whether we feel like we're a sexual goddess, you know, because again, I'm 54. There are too many of us at my age that feel that we're past it. I can tell you now at 54 that I am in my sexual prime, you know, and just because we're in menopause doesn't mean that we can't enjoy sex, doesn't mean we can't enjoy being and feeling sensual and loving ourselves and loving our bodies. You know, I've been dealt all this stuff and I've gone through the hatred of my body. I've gone through I don't want this, I don't need this, and I want the pain to go. I want this. Why is this happening to me? I've gone through all of that. And a lot of this is acceptance, okay? So it's accepting who we are in the physical, okay? And knowing that once we start focusing on who we are and loving ourselves and accepting ourselves, that is the biggest catalyst for helping the healing journey. And loving ourselves is probably one of the things that we don't do very well. And I will hold my hands up and say that I am not very good at it. But I'm learning. And it's part of who I am. And it's part of my journey. And you can see that's emotional for me. But all I can say to you is that if any of this resonates with you, any of what I'm saying on this very long video, and I apologise for it being so long. Well, actually, no, I don't apologise because people need to hear it. But if any of this has resonated with you, if any of the pain or the emotional stuff, you think, oh my goodness, that sounds like me, or I'm going through some of that, I urge you to don't just assume it's because you're getting old. Because that's a mindset thing. The more that we tell ourselves we're getting old, so our bodies are going to fail us, then that's what's going to happen. You know, you're in charge of your own thoughts. You're in charge of your own reality. You're in charge of what happens to you. And do not fall into that pattern of assuming your body is going to fail you. Okay. Our body renews itself. The cells renew. We can heal. We can heal. And I will heal. I am healed. I am healed. I am love. I am light. And on that note, I'm going to say namaste. And thank you for watching and thank you for listening.